Good morning and welcome back to Black Bear Forge. Today I am working on a customer order for 3 crosses. These are very simple crosses, nothing very fancy with them, just a little bit of ornamentation at the ends, maybe some texturing of the bars so it doesn't look quite so raw, but nothing very difficult here. So I thought I would show you the key elements of what I'm working on. Each cross will have different finial details on the ends of the arm. So I thought we would take a look at each of these finial details. I don't need to show you each one 4 times. If you understand how to do the first one, you can do all 4 of them the same. For these, I'm starting off with 1/4 by 1.5 material, and after doing a little bit of trial and error to try and figure out what I want all my proportions to end up with, what I've ended up with is that I will have 2/3 of my distance here, and 1/3 here, here, and on this arm over here. And in this case, that's 24 inches from here to here, so 16 here, 8, 8, and 8. Does that make sense? So for you folks in metric, that's about 1/4 by 37 millimeters, and the long section is about 61 centimeters long. Short section is 40.5 centimeters long. Exact sizes, like so many of these things, don't matter. Make things fit what you want. And if you don't like these proportions, if you got a better idea, go ahead and try that. I tried using the golden mean proportion and I thought it was a little bit off, so I altered it to this. I think the first one of these we're going to do is going to have a point with split ears that roll over. That's probably the most complicated of the 3 styles I'm going to do. So let me show you how I lay that out. I'm just going to make a guess at how far down I want this to go. For the split, what we'll end up doing is splitting it this way, leaving a point, something like that. But the more even I lay this out, the better my split will look compared to what I just drew there. So I'm going to measure that at 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to come in 3/8 on each side. And I'll split from here to here, the center to there. And I guess I should go ahead and mark the center of this just to be absolutely sure I start off right. And so I can find my marks later when it's hot. I'm going to go ahead and center punch that. And I'll put a little center punch right there on the end, which creates a little burr that I'll be able to see hot. And that's my layout for that. So let's take this to the forge. So let's start by splitting the ends on this a little bit. I'm just going to start holding it down to the anvil with a hold fast there so I can find my marks. Or so it stays stable while I find my marks, perhaps I should say. And I just want to get lines in here so I know where to cut when I come back. And because I'll cut through pretty quick on these, I'm going to put a cutting plate down. My hold fast isn't holding very well. Now, once you get a good line established that you can come back into, these cut out pretty darn quickly. End up breaking that out in the long run. Cool your chisel every now and then. And you can use a hand chisel, you don't have to use a handled one. This one is just way easier to use. And yes, I like my chisel handle in line with the cutting edge. I think it's easier to cut a straight line that way. If you want one off at an angle, that is certainly your prerogative. There we go. So I'm going to need to do a little filing to clean that up. And doing that hot at the vise is the fastest, most efficient way to do it. In hot material, this old wore-out file cuts in both directions. Just make sure there's no sharp spots. I'm going to roll the little tails over. And how far you roll those is just up to the appearance you want to have here. I've seen this design done lots of different ways. And I think I'm going to draw out that center point just a little bit longer. Again, it's largely just aesthetics. And I can straighten it out using this little anvil bridge because I can get in there and see what I'm doing a little bit better. It's pretty good. May take some final cleaning up with a file at the very end, cold, just to tweak and adjust that. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bevel on this, just to give it a bit more character, more places for the light to reflect on it, and make it look a little bit less sterile, like brand new, fresh off the rack steel. So that's generally what I'm after for this finial and this version of cross. And now I think we'll go on to the next version of the finial. This one's just going to be a simple spade finial. I'm going to start by cutting the end of the bar off to a point. This makes it a whole lot easier to get the 1.5 inch bar down to a point without creating cold shuts. Might be easier to do this from the top with a top chisel, but you can do it with a Hardy. Don't cut all the way through. You don't want to smack the Hardy with your hammer. But you can break it when it gets close. So that's all I want there for now. Cleaning this up with a file is just fine when you're finished with it, if it isn't quite as symmetrical as you might like. But again, the simplicity and the almost crudeness of some of these things is what gives them their charm. And again, I want to lightly bevel the edges. On these short bars, I'm beveling all the way across. but I'm not going to on the long ones, so I'll explain that when I get to those. So that's a very simple finial. And the last finial is sort of a version of this, but not exactly the same. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to do essentially the same thing here and cut this off at about 45 degrees. And yes, you could do this with a saw, angle grind or something like that. And just like I did with the other one, I'm going to center this, but this one is not going to get spread. So that's a little bit of a different approach. I don't mind letting this thicken up some. I want it fairly beefy in the long run. So that's all I want for now. Then I want to fuller in just behind where that cut stops. Something like that. I'm going to round this up some. Not going to put any kind of a big taper in there. That's just enough to give it a smooth transition. There again, files are nice for cleaning some of this stuff up. This one then I want a very dramatic bevel on, which is why I left it thick. And all three of these styles are in keeping with some images of old New Mexico or Hispanic crosses that my customer provided me. Then I'm also going to lightly bevel this just like the other ones. Need to heat that back up though. I'm tipping this up on the anvil so my bevel is laying flat. That can help line up and smooth out a bevel. So that's our third finial style. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish all the finials on these, and then I'll meet you right back here and show you what I'm going to do a little bit different with the bevel on the long bars. And I think it'll make sense as I show it to you. As I mentioned, I'm not beveling this all the way. And that's because when I put these together, I want a nice flat closed up seam back here. I think they'll just go together better if there's not any forging happening right through here. And I've put a center punch mark. That way I know where they're going to intersect when I assemble them. So I just want to run my chamfer up to 3/4 of an inch on this side, 3/4 on that side. That's the width this is, and that should work out just fine. So I'm going to find that center punch and just put it at the edge of the anvil so I can judge my 3/4 of an inch space here. You can do that both sides. And I got something I can find again. That's really all the forging steps. Everything is just repetitive on all 4 arms of the cross. Hopefully you can kind of see where that goes from bevel to flat. Now we need to assemble these. I'm just taking a few moments to clean up any rough spots, sharp edges, anything that's a little lumpy, bumpy, stuff like that. And make sure I put a little bevel on the front just to ensure that it isn't sharp. And I've done this little bit of filing to all of the ends on all of the pieces for all three crosses. So my next step, I'm going to go ahead and take this back to the forge. I'm going to heat it up just to a dull red, wire brush it, just to get rid of the shiny silver from filing. I want it to all be one color, kind of an even black color. So that's just a finishing step, not a forging step. This is also your chance to make any last minute tweaks and adjustments you may think it needs. And I'll put my touch mark on the back. Now the time has come to go ahead and assemble these. So we're just going to take a look at assembling one of them. Again, they're all going to go together the same way. I want to make sure I know what my center is, so find center and mark it on the short arm of the cross. Whatever that distance is, that's how far down you want to come from the long end. Ideally, that ends up right where you put your mark and your little flat there, but if not, I think being proportioned right is more important than that little detail there was. Now, a trick we've looked at before to make a single rivet not spin is to take a punch and create some square shoulders on the inside there, and that should be all it takes to keep this from turning and getting loose, is the rivet will swell and fill up those shoulders. I only need one rivet header because I'm going to countersink this backside. Have a square handy so you can double check it and make sure it's square, although the irregular edges make it not perfect, but do the best you can. This rivet is way too long, but I can trim it after it's set, and that way I guarantee it gets flush. This is where you need to check for square. Before it's completely tight. So I ground that nearly flush. Now I can just clean it up a little bit. Well, I need to go find out if they need some kind of a special hanger put on these. There's all sorts of ways these could be hung. They could have a little loop put in the back that would hang these. They could have loops on the arms that could hang them. They could have screw holes put in them and screw them solidly to the wall. Lots of different options. I just need to find out what they want to do. They might also want the arms to be offset back to the wall, which the originals they sent pictures of don't look like they were done that way, but if that's what they want done, that's what I'll do. Stick around, I'll be right back in the morning and we'll take a look at whatever the solution to hanging these turned out to be. Put a little bit of wax on them, finish them, and then get some good close-up shots so you can see what we ended up with. Sometimes when you take a look at a project, you can see things that aren't really what they're meant to be, but I see some sort of a form for a gate or a railing or something like that in the way this is set right there. Good morning, it's time to get back to work on the crosses, and I got an answer from my customer and they said they would like little loops on the back. So I'm going to weld these little loops like this, and I'll show you how we made these loops. And I'll just weld that to the back. I would like to do this in a more traditional manner, but I don't want anything showing on the front. Perhaps the best idea, if I'd known what they wanted in the first place, would have been to incorporate something in this rivet. And that's something to remember for the future, that a piece of 1/8" flat stock put in here when you do that rivet with a hole in it up here might be the best way to go. But these little loops will work very well, and for that I'm using some of this 3/16 rod that I get from the political signs during an election year. Good thing next year is an election year because I need some more of this stuff. So let's go over to the forge and make a simple little loop, then I'll weld these on and we'll take a look at the finished crosses. These are super simple. It's just a bent over bar. You probably figured that part out already, right? Then I'm just going to put a drift in here so that I can make a nice round ring on it, or closer to being round. Working over the hardy hole means that I've got something to support the drift on either side, makes life a little easier. That's really all I need to do. I'll cut that off once it cools. I went ahead and got these hot again, not a very high heat, just enough that I could put some wax on them. People ask what my finish is. Generally what I use is Johnson's Paste Wax. By the way, this video, not sponsored by Johnson's Paste Wax. Then as they cool, I wipe off any excess paste wax. That gives them a nice black, kind of a semi-gloss finish, and I really like that finish for the vast majority of the work I do, and on these in particular, I think it's just the ideal way to go. Now some of these are still too hot for me to pick up. The last one I finished, I just got the wax on it, so I can't pick it up and hold it. By the way, while these are still hot, make sure you know where you set them, because if you accidentally sit on one, you'll end up with hot cross bones. Oh, come on, that was funny. Anyways, I've made arrangements to take these to town this afternoon and deliver them. So as soon as they're cool, I'm going to get them packed up in the car and we're going to head to town, maybe have lunch and call it a day, and hope that the customer that ordered these likes them as much as I do. And I hope that you like them. If you do, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button down there. Ring the bell next to the subscribe button to be notified when I make new videos. Stick around, watch a few of my older videos, share the videos with your friends. Then by all means, make time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.